run back and forth between the camps, you know, pushing each other, running between the two kite flyers. And which is just explained it in the different languages. When people start making a movie like that, it's not about money or anything. It's really about the commitment of trying to do the best film possible. And everybody is who respected the story so much and loved the story so much that they truly try to do their best, try to create that world.
And cut.
It's all about passion, and we had a lot of, you know, joy making the film, even though it was so hard because we filmed, we were based out of Kashgar for our main portion of the film, which is in the western part of China, and no Western film has ever been shot there, and people were not very accustomed to film crews, and it was a real hard journey.
Looks at him, and then he steps out.
Here, they hoard a little bit together there. In this pack here on the left.
Adjusted that.
Okay, good. And then this.
Mark's always working. He doesn't stop. So it was kind of a question of us getting lucky, and we happened to get him right after he finished another movie. But he was always aware of it. You know, partly because he had read the book and loved it, and partly because we were friends and he knew I wrote the script.
Mark is a very special person and very special filmmaker. He has a very particular eye. And he has a very big heart. And he immediately connected to this story. He connected with the humanity of this story in a very, very profound way. And he's fearless.
Also, Michael, could we have a little bit more ammunition for him? Just a little bit more ammunition for him when he shoots. And also, when they run back for the whole group, they should run back faster.
There were some filmmakers who were afraid of venturing into this terrain, telling a story or making a movie set in a culture that was not their own. There was some that were afraid of what it meant to make this movie today. There were some who were challenged by the idea of making a movie partly in a language that wasn't their own, and Mark had none of these qualms.
The sound guy will set you both up with headsets.
Right off the bat, you know, Mark indicated to me how serious he was about making this film an authentic experience for the world, but also out of respect for the Afghans. And so I felt that they had definitely hired the right guy.
One of the very first questions that we had to address was that of language. And there was an enormous amount of debate about, is this an English language movie or is it a Farsi or Dari language movie, the indigenous language? And it was really, I have to say, Mark from the outset felt that authenticity was the most important thing.
I couldn't imagine the kids running around in Kabul in the 70s speaking English to one another, and then going on this journey to America, and then what language would they speak in America? Broken English? It just felt very unnatural and very and not very authentic to me. So I always insisted on that, and I thought it was a key element to the storytelling.
I had always thought that was the best way to do it, but I never thought it was possible. I really never believed it would happen. There was too much pressure because, you know, people thought that it would decrease the commerciality of the movie. But the only reason it happened is because Mark forced it to happen.
Looking back now, I don't think there's another choice that we could have made, but it was actually a difficult choice to make, and I applaud Mark for his kind of steadfast insistence on it.
And cut.
And this is my director, Mark. Okay? That's the last name. Forster. Mark Forster. Okay.
When we were casting it, we were looking at all of the enclaves of Afghans all over the world to find kids and also actors with other parts. And we very quickly realized the kids in all those parts of the world were very westernized. They were very, you know, they spoke fluent English and or fluent German in Germany or in the different countries. They spoke their language fluently. So I said, we have to go to Kabul. So my casting director, Kate Dowd from London, traveled to Kabul and started looking for kids there. And I joined her later, and she showed me like 2 schools and where she found most of the kids, and we played with the kids, and with a video camera I played around with them, and I just tried to feel the kids and see which one would be the best kids for the role, and basically sort of it was all instinctual how we then found Zakaria and Ahmad for Hassan and basically Ali Danish for Sarab. So it was just a process of them coming in and reading for me and playing with them over like a time period.
تو وقت ما طرف میکنی که پران دیگه طرف میره. کی طرف میره؟ از کجا میفهمی؟ گوی ما با تو دروغ گفتیم؟ گفتی تو الله دروغ؟ دروغ که چطوری بخورم بهتر است.
I think they turned out amazing. I think everybody agrees that their performances turned out really strong. And as an editor, you don't create a good performance. You can't do it if it's not there. You enhance it and you pull it out. I mean, those kids did those performances.
Going to do a lot of running today.
During filming, I had a translator, Ilham Hosseini, who was actually Khaled's cousin, and she translated pretty much everything for me for all the cast who couldn't speak English. So she was basically my Dari interpreter, and basically she really understood what I wanted.
That's not that ending. It's my story. I get to end it how I want.
Khaled Abdallah is such a special actor. I saw United 93 and I thought, oh my God, this guy, he's not doing much and he has this incredible charisma and he's almost not speaking, and I think it's so hard to do a role without not using any words and just purely charismatic. Khaled. So Khaled came in to read, and he couldn't speak there. He's Egyptian, but I just believed, because he speaks Arabic, that he will be able to learn the language. And Khaled Hosseini, the author, was first very nervous about it, but then when he actually came to set and he spoke Dari with him, he was blown away that he actually was able to learn and capture the language within a month and a half in Kabul.
I feel like I've always had a very intuitive relationship with Amir as a character and a very good sense of him. But also at the same time, the whole journey that I've had has been much like most people, I think, have with the book. I've had a journey of finding things out about Afghanistan and finding things out about Amir, or more particularly as well the world in which he grew up, in the journey that I had.
There's something in his eyes that suggests that there's more going on than really what we're seeing on the surface. And that could be interpreted as guilt or as many different things, and I think it works very much in his favor.
And action!
I was very blessed with the cast, and they're very, very special actors. I cast, I would say, 60 to 70% of the actors out of Kabul, and then the rest out of London, Los Angeles, and the rest of the world, and just try to look at different actors from different films from all over the globe, and that's sort of how the process was.
He's great. He gives you freedom to do what you want, and then you do what you want, and then he comes to you and say, okay, we have that option now, can we make it this option, you know? So this way he gives you more confidence. Instead of coming and shout at you and say, oh, this is not good, you did it wrong. He knows how to deal with the actors, how to speak with the actors, and get what he wants from the actor.
That was very good. Let's try that one.
He's very subtle, and he's very sensitive. He's very supportive, and he's very kind.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels a bit weird to say that out of nowhere. It could be nice to interrupt. That's what I'm saying. That's all I'm talking about, just the interruption.
Oh, okay.
You feel he has a very centered and deep emotional connection with this story, and with this kind of story, both in the childhood aspect of it and also the grown man aspect of it.
I miss John.
projects like this don't come along that often. We all know that. So it's truly a blessing to be a part of this. And it's been such a journey, you know. The reason I think people react to this book, although it's a story, the Middle Eastern story, but it's really a human story. And I think it just breaks all boundaries. You connect, you feel as a human being. It just takes you on a journey.
Yeah, you're curious, you stare at him, you stare at the kid. You don't back up, you keep looking.
I did a lot of research. I had Super 8mm film from the 70s, which I shared with a production designer, the costume designer, and the entire crew in general. I worked with most of them except the production designer I haven't worked with before. But I traveled to Peshawar, Pakistan, to get an idea how that looked like and how to get the details right and really understand each time period and communicate with your crew the best you can, so it really becomes one organic piece. But Carlos Conti, the production designer, had probably one of the biggest challenges because he literally came to Kashgar and he had to recreate that beauty from the 70s in Afghanistan, and then he had to basically swap it and go right into the opposite and recreate the deterioration from the Taliban regime. And it was very hard just dealing with the people who lived there and then really creating the look and the signage and all the details right. And it was just, I mean, very, very hard. And he had a great crew. There was Karen Murphy as an art director from Australia who was really crucial as well in the whole process that we were able to do all of this.
We filmed in China, but where we filmed in China isn't really China. When you're in the Xinjiang province and you're in Kashgar, it doesn't feel like China. It's a Muslim culture. It's populated by the Uyghur minority, and their culture prevails. And the old town of Kashgar feels like a city, as we were told, city in Afghanistan that is now long forgotten. So it was a perfect place for filming. And in fact, many of the Afghans who again traveled through the Xinjiang Kashgar portion of our filming felt like they were home, and it was very surreal experiencing the movie through their eyes, because the cities that we shot in are strangely locked in time.
One of the really gratifying things that we've heard just recently was that the movie was shown to the Afghan diplomats, including the ambassador, I think, to the United Nations, and several, officials, all of whom grew up in Kabul, all of whom lived there during the 70s, and they couldn't believe that Mark was Swiss. They thought it was so accurate. First of all, they couldn't believe that it wasn't shot in Kabul because it looked exactly the way they remembered it.
Mark said, I wanted to feel like Lawrence of Arabia, starring people you've never heard of or seen before. I want it to be an epic story about people who are in the corner of our eye, and I want to turn the camera towards them and give them that scope. And that was pretty much all I needed to hear.
I mean, do you prefer to see like this, Mark? Tracing down your finger, okay, keep going with your finger, like that, so you just see a pure part of it all the way? Or seeing it as the whole carving?
I think a part is nice. Roberto Schaefer, my DP, and I, we worked on all my movies together, and we, discussed the look of it and how we are intending to approach it, and ultimately, that is sort of an intimate epic, that you have this epic scale, but then at the same time the intimacy, how we light it, and the whole look of it. It was always very early on, always in discussions.
I grew up in Afghanistan in the 70s, before the wars, before the atrocities that have happened in that country the last 30 years. And it was a very innocent, peaceful, quiet time, relatively speaking. And to me, the kites will be forever associated with that time, with that place, and with that era in my childhood. So the kites are kind of emblematic of that innocence, of that period. And so it's a symbol of that innocence that has been lost.
Stay right there. Yeah, just keep him up. That's good.
a kite master was very important for me, to have like someone who consulted me in making the kites and creating the kites and showing the fights. And when I created the fights first preliminary on a computer, you know, just going through the motions, what fight number 1 will be, what fight number 2 will be, how one basically defends, how one attacks, how one escapes. So it's these different ways how a kite fight works. We really broke down and orchestrated according to that. But you know, it's a real kite on the ground, and then we launch the kite, but then the kite becomes a CG kite, and then it comes in the air. But then we have a small helicopter who does the move, imitates the move, and then put the kite in the foreground, and so on. It's a whole process.
There's parts of it like a thriller. There are parts of it that are just classic coming-of-age story. It's an immigrant story. It's really a story about fathers and sons. I mean, it's a lot of different things. I don't know how you would describe it.
You know, to be honest, I almost forgot about the thrills of jumping from an intimate scene to an action scene to a dramatic scene, because it was so overbearing, the project, and so much work that you just sort of, I was sort of in this one vision. I said, okay, this is the scene I need to do, that's how I'm going to do it, that's how I see it, and just do it.
Action! Okay, down.
I never really, you know, in that moment questioned myself, or even, I wouldn't say not enjoy it, but it was so much in so little time, and being under budgetary constraints because you're shooting in Dari without stars, that it's a very intense kind of experience that I didn't have time to reflect.
That's great. You okay after that?
It takes some getting used to be there, standing in this place. We have dozens of people running around like crazy, trying to recreate a very internal and private thought of yours, which is what novel writing really is. It's the ultimate solitary endeavor, whereas filmmaking is, if nothing else, it's a collaboration. And I went with my father, who's very, very proud of the whole thing. You know, he was beaming with pride. Got to know Mark better, got to meet all the actors, and it was fun to be able to help out here and there and to kind of serve as the standby cultural advisor. So it was, I had a great time.
And background! And action!
Certainly, the combination of the language and the variety of experience in front of the camera and the pressure of the book and the expectation of the book and the randomness of the locations and the way that impacted the shooting, I would say it was probably the most challenging movie that I've worked on with Mark. Probably his most challenging. All those elements just made for very chancy stuff that totally worked, but it was quite hard to carve it all out.
The shooting was very hard. The post-production was tricky because of putting it all together and trying to find all the nuances. So the structure of the piece always changed a little bit in post while I was working with Matt, but not tremendously. We pretty much stuck to the structure in the script. It maybe here or there a little bit, but ultimately what it really is in post is you really see if they will fit together like a glove, if they go from scene to scene, if it works, and if it all becomes one melting sort of storyline.
I think the thing that surprised him when he started watching my cut was how solid and confident and assured that material had come across. It just locked in, you know. And initially I was a little concerned that we were going to go with Dari, so I consulted some people about subtitles and at the same time about working in a foreign language. Stephen Marioni from Babbel was who I talked to. And he said, I think you'll find that when you get it and you start working with it, it's not a problem. You'll transcend the language. And I was like, okay. And I kept his number because I had a hard time imagining that. But it's true. Language barrier is the wrong word. It was not a barrier creatively. Another challenge was music. It was a conscious decision to not go wall to wall with the ethnic music.
I chose Alberto Iglesias as a composer. And apart from loving his scores, I thought Alberto Iglesias comes from Spain, he understands heat. So I thought, and I always had this feeling like of Afghanistan, you know, that you have to understand the heat, and like in Spain there is this heat, and I felt was always somehow drawn to that, and that was my first impulse when I was looking for a composer, to understand that component of heat and dryness. And then we started talking about it, and I felt like I didn't want to do a traditional Afghan score for this movie necessarily, because I felt like, you know, it's a story I wanted to share with the world, with the rest of the world, and I thought the music can be reflected sometimes of ethnical background, but ultimately that the music shouldn't just be based on an ethnic Afghan score. I thought that would be wrong and wouldn't be the right approach. So I really wanted to open that up and make sort of a more of a mixed cultural experience in that sense on a musical level.
So you have a book written by an Afghan American, adapted by a New Yorker, directed by a Swissman, one of the producers is Australian, being shot in Beijing with the kids from Kabul, Baba from Iran, other actors from England and France. I mean, just incredibly international, all gathered together to shoot this movie set in Afghanistan. It was just kind of bizarre, but you know, and it worked.
I had written a draft where the ending was actually fairly morose, much more than the ending in the novel now. And it involved the death of a child and remorse over that, and trying to come to terms with that. And there was something lacking in that ending. And I felt, here's this character, Amir, has gone through this incredible journey only for it to end in kind of this nihilistic way. And my wife, who had read the manuscript initially, and said, you know, the ending, maybe this boy can survive, and maybe there's something you can do with that. And I had initially resisted it. But then when other people read the book, and they also said the same thing, the manuscript. So I said, you know, I'll give it a shot, and I'll write a different ending and see how it feels. And if it's no good, we'll go with the original ending. But then when I brought this boy back to life, as it were, resurrected him, Amir became a father, and then that father-son circle was closed, and the ending became sweeter and simpler. And the best solutions are always simpler. I mean, they're always the direct route. And it became, I think, a much more satisfying ending.
I think it's crucial that the book ends on a hopeful aspect. And I think it was very important for me, because I think ultimately I'm a very hopeful person, and I believe because of hope it is that we keep going, because one can look at this world and see everything around one can be so negative, and I try to see everything constantly positive. And I think you go on a journey like the Kite Runner, you go through so many dark moments and so many moments of despair that ultimately hope will set you free at the end of the movie. And I think it's that hope which new generations get born out of, that hope where redemption really comes into place and forgiveness really has its most power.
You alright?
I have to tell you a story.
کنون رزم و سهراب و رستم شنو دیگرها شنیدستی این هم شنو